So like I was saying earlier, we're in this episode now. We on fire right now, right? So earlier I was talking about my wall that's right above my window here in the studio, and I have Matthew 25 verse 14 through 30 written on there. That's basically what I said. It's the parable of the talents. Now, first of all, let's just read the parable of the talents. I'm going to read it out. It's going to be a little bit, so just hang with me. But there's a reason, and there are a lot of reasons actually why I have that on there, because I think that keeps me honest. That keeps me right along the path that I need to be on in order to continue to serve people and increasingly serve people better, right? So that verse right there is very important to me. Very, very important to me. And I'm going to explain to you why. But first, let's dig into it a little bit. I'm reading from the King James Version. So Matthew chapter 25, verse 14, starting there, and we're going to 30, okay? And it reads, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who was called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. To every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that hath received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them 5 or other 5 talents. And likewise, he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that hath received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also, that hath received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents besides them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which hath received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gathered where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away, and even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So that's a lot, right? Real quick, we're just going to break it down a little bit, right? Because there's some main points that I want to talk about on why I have this up on my wall. Why is it a reminder for me to stay on this path? And why, and what does it actually motivate me to do? And what does it actually, what path is opened up by me understanding what this verse or what these verses mean? Okay. So first things first, I know reading from the King James Version, that's just the version I read, it is what it is, but I'll break down a little bit more to certain key points, right? The gist of it is this, though. A dude was going, I said a dude, yes. A dude was going out and he was basically leaving his kingdom to his 3 servants, right? He was leaving all these, basically money with his servants, right? But he was going out on a long trip. So he was like, I'm out, but I'm going to leave this with y'all. Y'all need to be responsible for it. Y'all need to make sure that this grows, or at least I don't lose it, right? Now, the second part of that, though, is kind of funny, was like, at least if I, make sure I don't lose it. But the main point here, especially in all of this, is not even that just not to lose it, but to gain. I need you to work this money until I come back, right? Because essentially, if the master never left, if that dude never left, that's what he would have done. So he was going to be profitable. That's how we got to where he was in the first place, right? So that's as far as this parable goes, right? So I'm kind of like, let's just think about this, rationally a little bit. This dude goes out. He splits the kingdom based on what each servant can do, right? So that's skills, opportunities, things like that, right? So the expectation is for them to grow and grow like abundantly. That's the expectation, because that's what he would have done had he stayed. That's key number 1, right? So, then you have the first 2 servants, they basically doubled what they had. And then the last one went and hid what he had. And basically, master comes back, the Lord comes back, it was like, yo, good job. You doubled what you had. That's abundant production, because that's what I would have done. Basically, essentially, that's the silent part. He didn't say that, right? That's the implied part. That's what he would have done if he stayed. Would have produced abundantly. You produced abundantly. Good job. You doubled. And next one, you doubled. Good job. Let's go. You get more, right? And the one who took his stuff and hid it, he was just like, you could have put it, basically, you just could have put it in a bank and got interest off of it. But he didn't even do that. He put it in the ground. And he basically came up with this thing saying, I was scared. Now, there's a lot of preachers, pastors, Bible scholars, and people that say like, some people say that he was actually scared, and other people say that he was just saying he was scared because he had a misconception of who the Lord or who this master was, right? Because he was saying you collected where you didn't actually plant the seed for. So you reaped where you didn't sow, right? So you're basically profiting off the work and the seeding of someone else. So then he was just like, so I was scared because I heard you was a hard man. But so if that were the case, though, the other 2 servants would have had some other response in kind, and there was nothing like that as such. So that's why I just kind of just split into 2 groups here, where it's like some of them were some of the scholars say that, he was actually fearful, and the others was just like, or he was overtaken by fear because fear is irrational, which I can see that, right? But then there's the other one where it's just like, nah, he was just saying he was because he didn't produce anything from it. So he was lazy. He didn't want to do anything. And then when it came time to actually show what he did and be held accountable for what he did or didn't do, he made something up. Both pathways work. So we get that there. So their main points that I really want to bring up. The first main point is stewardship, right? So the master entrusted his property to his servants, and each servant was given what they had the ability to handle. That shows that we have all been given different assignments with various skills, resources, and opportunities under that assignment, okay? So the servant that had the 5 talents, they had 5 opportunities. 5 skills or skills, opportunities, resources. They had multiple ways, multiple pathways, 5 pathways to work with to double that up or to produce abundantly. Now, remember, this calls back to Genesis 1:27. Right? Remember, if you go back now multiple episodes when I was in the man show, I was talking about what was man created for, right? And it was like, so Genesis 1:27 lays that all out, where it's subdue and reign, rule, like all of that stuff, but also produce. So like, remember those top 4 things that man was created for: walk with God, number 1, Number 2 was to work, to tend, to till the ground, the work, right? Number 3 was to produce abundantly from that work. And number 4 was to rule and to reign. That's your assignment. So here, stewardship is the same thing as to till, to protect, to till, tend to, and protect back in Genesis, right? So this is calling back to our original creation point. What were we created to do? So all the Lord, all the master in this parable was saying was do what you were made to do. Right there. So it's just like, okay, cool. So another point for me that, and again, this is what it all says to me over the years is, yes. So this is what it says to me, right? But the use of talents, right? So we got to make sure we understand what talents is. In the parable, talents seems like it was money, right? But the greater picture here is like, of course, in all of the parables, what that thing actually is represents something else, right? So what the talents actually represents is we're supposed to produce from those talents, basically. How are we supposed to use those talents? And again, those are the skills, resources, and opportunities afforded to us by God. Okay? We're supposed to produce from those talents abundantly, right? Not a little bit. Like the first 2 servants that did well doubled what they had. So that's a big increase, right? Not like what we be happy, like we've invested in a stock market. We're happy with a 10% increase. These cats are talking about doubling what they put, like whatever they worked with, they were doubling what they had. They were doubling what they were producing, basically. So it's just like the first 2, they doubled what they had, and then they produced positive outcomes instead of hiding. And that's the thing, right? So you're supposed to use your skills, resources, and opportunities to produce positive outcomes. Are we getting closer to why I have it up there? Right? Positive outcomes, right? Instead of hiding your skills, resources, and opportunities in fear. Now, that's a big one. That's a huge one because there are a lot of active Christians out there covering up and hiding their talents, hiding their skills, hiding their resources and opportunities because they don't want anybody else to know about it, because they're afraid of repercussion. They're afraid of somebody coming at their neck, whatever it may be, but they're hiding it instead of producing from it abundantly. So I have that verse up there as a reminder to continue to push forward and produce abundantly positive outcomes, not only for myself, but for others. It's the reminder for me, right? The next point is there's a reward for proper stewardship, proper leadership under your assignment. Stewardship, right? The first 2 servants were rewarded with praise and greater responsibility. Wait, hold on. Pause. Wait, they were rewarded with more work? Yes, they were rewarded with more work because the reality is they were rewarded with not just more work, more opportunities, more resources, more skills. Think about that for a second. That's what the talent represents. So active working of the skills, of the resources, of the opportunities produces more skills, opportunities, and resources so that it becomes multiplicative in the positive outcomes that you're producing. So one of the rewards is actually lining you up with your purpose even more. One of the rewards is praise and more purpose. And I don't know about you, but for me, another reason why it's up there, another reason why I follow along with it, is because there is nothing like living a life full of purpose. There's nothing like that at all. And the thing is, I so hate living the opposite. Because there was a point in time where I was living a life that had no purpose. What was I doing? Why was I doing it? I had no understanding of any of that stuff, and I didn't care. That wasn't a good life to me. In fact, it was more pain then than there is actually now during the work and trying to build. So one of the rewards is more purpose. The next point is there's consequences for inaction. And this one's kind of self-explanatory, right? There are consequences for failing to use those skills, opportunities, and resources. Okay? There are consequences for inaction, especially if it's inaction out of fear or neglect. Okay? So another point, there's judgment and accountability. The servants were held accountable for what they did or didn't do, and then there was a judgment after that, right? So the master returned and settled the accounts with each of the servants. We ultimately will be held accountable, and we will be held accountable for the use of our talents, skills, opportunities, resources, and we will be judged accordingly. Either we're going to get some kingdoms, or we're going to be where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Or we are going to, and ultimately, it's only the actual judgment is just a continuation of what we do. For instance, you have that first servant, they produced from their skills, opportunities, resources. So they just get an opportunity to do more of that because that's what they did. The servant that had the one that hid their stuff in fear and basically had some kind of gnarly things to say about the master, basically he gets more of that. He gets more of the laziness. He gets more of just hiding. He gets more of the fear. So you produce under this premise, you produce what you want more of. Right? And it sounds so, yeah. Now, and then the last point and the last, reason. So it's like, it deals with abundance, because I said that word a lot here, and dearth, which is the exact opposite, which is scarcity, right? As the master settles up with his servants, one thing becomes clear. Those who are faithful and productive will receive more, to do even more. Those who are not will lose even what little they do have. So there's no way that you could just have all of this stuff and keep it. You can't have all those opportunities, skills, and resources and not do anything with it. You can't hoard it. You can't keep it in the house and let it chill. You can't do any of that stuff. You gotta use it. And you gotta use it to produce abundant, positive outcomes. And that's what I train by. That's what backs Say Cheese and Lift. Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30, the parable of the talents. And then again, I know a lot of wealth gurus will use that as a way to say, like, that that's my favorite parable of accruing wealth. It's not. Right? Because the thing about wealth is typically, right? And this is what I think there's some people who get it, but this is the struggle between, the wealthy Christians or whatever you want to call, like, and everyone else, right? They put so much effort into accruing that wealth, and they forget about the producing abundant positive outcomes from that, right? Because the wealth becomes a resource, right? So all you're doing is gathering it up. But if you're just keeping it to you or spending it on you, you're missing a point, right? So the whole point here for me concerning that parable, concerning the talents, is not to just gather money. The whole point is not to gather wealth. It's to gather positive outcomes. And the only way you can gather those positive outcomes is if it has some form of multiplicative characteristic about it. And the only way you could do that is if these positive outcomes are actually produced in others. That's the driving force here. So on this one, I definitely thank you for hanging with me, right? Hopefully, even this segment alone produces some positive outcomes for you, right? And hopefully you can take some of this and go produce some positive outcomes for others. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? I'm operating under the premise that if I continue to produce these positive outcomes and produce them abundantly, and actually fall in love with producing positive outcomes too, right? You can't begrudgingly do this. You actually have to have a heart for it. And that's another topic, another day. But to be able to take that and produce all of these positive outcomes everywhere you go, and they do the same thing, we'd be better off. I'll tell you that for sure. But as for this studio, as for what I do, as for how I do it, that's how we roll. And that's what drives Say Cheese and Lift as a brand, as everything, as a whole. All right? Not just for me, not just even for the people who work here, but for everybody else. Everybody else, so they could do the same. Okay? All right. So if you like this segment, here's another one for you. Click over here. And if you want the entire podcast, go this way. Click on that one right there. And once again, I appreciate you. All right, you take it easy.